so beautiful. I'm gonna stay.
Good luck.
In films, from the very beginning, people wanted to show stuff you cannot see in real life. That's the secret of these visual effect movies.
I've driven every vehicle you can think of away from every disaster you can think of, and run to and from every vehicle and disaster you can think of.
I can't visualize as large as this movie is. Anything that I could imagine pales into insignificance compared to what's actually being done.
I walk onto the set and it's like the size of California is in blue screen. I mean, there's just blue drapery everywhere.
It's fascinating. It feels a lot more like pretending than acting at times. It goes back to what we did as kids, which is there's nothing there and we're pretending there's something there. And it's kind of the reason most of us started in the first place. So it is a little bit of a throwback in that way.
It's like the old joke, the script, they say, you know, there's one line, and Rome burned. And you think, okay, that's one line of a page, but how do you shoot that? Every page had something like that in this movie. I don't think there's ever been a more ambitious scope for a movie. It just all seems like he's got it all in his head, and this amazing team that's worked it all out.
So, a lot of people who read the script said it's undoable. You know, and I always like that when people say that. It isn't, you know, because there's a solution for everything. But then they don't understand really that it's a lot of people in vehicles, which is doable in a way. Because what you do is you're just gonna put a RV on a gimbal and shoot him in front of blue screen and then shoot a couple of helicopter shots. And then the rest will be CG. And then it's like all of a sudden feasible, or an ash cloud is like kind of closing in on a plane. It's done in blue screen, it's not done in real. So that makes it feasible.
We all feel that you need to create a combination of real and green screen, real and pure computer-generated images. There's a certain tactile quality about movies with real big sets and real extras, and there's a difference between jumping on a green box and jumping on the real thing.
He's got massive sets built, and so you're really just talking about the rest of the horizon is the blue screen, but you're also actually acting on huge sets.
Very often with the movie, you're acting to one wall that is perfectly kind of Victorian or something, but then as soon as, if the camera kind of pans slightly to the right, it's, you know, you and me and this big thing here, but everything is complete, down to the last detail.
The objective is that you don't ultimately know what was built, what's shot practical, what's a visual effect. We draw the whole thing and conceive of the whole thing, and then talk very specifically with Roland, what do you need? And then we build models and we do little SketchUps so we can move through the space and talk about it.
The lines are actually drawn quite early in pre-production because we need to know budget-wise if it's going to be a physical effects or is it going to be a visual effects or is it going to be a combination of both. Roland, because of his experience, he's quite clear of what he likes to see real and where he thinks that it's best for the visual effects to take over. But basically anything that is like a real wide shot, there's no way you would see all the destruction, and we can't duplicate that kind of destruction. It would be a visual effects, and anything tighter than physical effects would take over.
When you see these blue screens, you have no idea. I mean, you have some idea from the renderings in the script what it's going to look like, but then there's this whole other army of people putting together this film with the computer stuff. It's pretty wild.
I did many movies with Volker Engel before in Germany. I love about him that he is like very methodical and very research oriented. He has a very incredible eye for what looks real.
It never seemed intimidating from the size because, let's put it this way, if it would be any other director and I would know, okay, I'm dealing with a director who might not know exactly what he wants or what's going to end up on the screen, and we have to do a lot of trial and error, I would be very nervous. But especially with the history that we have, there's the feeling of somebody is covering your back. We can go to him and say, listen, I mean, I know that we have these 20 shots here, but as it's planned right now, you probably need 10 additional ones. Can we talk about this? I mean, he's not going to be an egomaniac about that and say, like, I don't care how you guys do it. It needs to be done like that. There's an open conversation all the time. So that makes it better and makes us less nervous about the workload.
He is partnered with Mark Weigert. Mark Weigert is a guy who can do every one of these shots himself. So he's like kind of the technical part, the computer genius of the two.
One of the biggest challenges that we face is actually the sheer amount of challenges that are in this movie. Obviously we have several different types of disasters that are happening, earthquakes, floods, huge volcanic eruptions, almost atomic explosions with several different cities that are being destroyed, all different types of effects, and each one of these needs to be designed. We need to do research and development for things that have never been done before. So it's not a movie that's just about one single thing. We're saying, okay, if we just had an earthquake, for instance, it would be comparatively easy. It's still not easy, but comparatively easy because we were dealing with just one thing. And once you figure that one out, you can do it over and over again. In this movie, it's absolutely not possible. We figure one thing out and it's one scene. It's literally sometimes 3 lines in the script where it says, our heroes are driving through downtown as it crumbles.
These two together are like incredible people to have in your movie. For some years, they wanted to produce their own movies, they produced some movies, and I couldn't have them. And this movie, I just had to talk them into it. I said, look, you have to do this.
One thing we talk about a lot actually in the early stages of pre-production is how to structure the size and the scale of all the events that are happening so that there's really a curve happening. It starts slow, more and more happens, more and more happens until the very end, and we don't start with something that's absolutely huge and then afterwards everything else is kind of disappointing afterwards. So you really have to spread it out.
One of the first scenes I have with Amanda, we're in a supermarket and we're having a little bit of a discussion about us and what is separating us at the moment. And then in fact, the ground opens up and separates us. That's that subtle approach to relationship drama.
This is what I mean by pulling us apart.
But it's really kind of a fun scene. And I always love scenes like that where you take this sort of really ordinary, we're kind of night shopping and then wham, this thing hits.
I don't even know if there's any scene in the movie where we read it and thought that's going to be very easy to do. I think that like on every page we were thinking, oh, yeah, okay. We'll have to figure something out. Supermarket was that same way. What do we shoot for real? And that has a lot of implications because if you shoot something for real, at first you always have to think about how do you make it so it's safe for the actors? And the second thing is how can you make it so you can integrate that well later with the computer animation. So you really have to think about how do I approach this? What's the technology, what's the techniques behind it that I'm going to do? First it would be storyboarded, then the next thing is we would do a computer animated version of the entire scene. So you kind of have a very good blueprint.
They have extensive pre-visualizations where you can see the whole scene in a cartoon form. Previs, we call it. These previses, they become better and better. I mean, when I kind of compared them like 10 years ago, it was like only schematics, and now you can quite see how it will look.
We have really 3 different phases. The first phase happens really on the set, where you just have a couple of things shaking, maybe like a cornflakes package falling out of a shelf. Then we have a different setup where we show a lot more stuff falling and crumbling and so on, and that's where we already have our actors. They're just standing on, clinging to these little poles in front of a blue screen. Everything around them, behind them, is already computer generated. And then there's a third stage where we show the aftermath of the destruction, where you see a big, huge crevasse that actually went through the supermarket, which is a digital matte painting. It's one of the smaller sequences in the movie because it's really just the very beginning and it's not many shots, not as many as other 3-minute sequences, for instance, that we have. But still, technically, it was something that we really had to invent how to do it.
The more and more we talked about it, I had this feeling, I want to kind of do a big earthquake sequence in LA. And naturally, you have to figure out how to do it. We knew that he has to rescue his wife, and he's a limo driver, so we said, okay, this will be the limo ride through LA. And then we thought, how can you get out of LA? Only with a plane. So the little plane sequence was born.
The ideas that he had made it also then really come to life. And when we thought about, okay, what does it mean if you have a 10.5 earthquake? I mean, a 10.5 earthquake means everything that is in your scene is shaking and breaking. Every little element has to be destroyed. So at first, when we started location scouting in Los Angeles, we thought, oh, maybe we can do it here, maybe we can do it here. And then we thought, no, we can't do it anywhere, because if we shoot it somewhere, what we have to do is we literally have to erase everything out of the scene and then replace it with an animated scene. So why even bother? What we then decided is, okay, we will generate the entire environment in the computer. So once we knew that, we said, okay, now we have the freedom to do anything we want.
When you talk about earthquakes, it was always done like you shake the camera and the actor was acting like the floor was shaking. And I thought, that you have to go a step beyond that in a modern movie. So our effects supervisor invented the shaky floor.
We've probably done some of the biggest rigs that I've ever seen. We actually built these huge decks that float and shake. They're like 8,000 square feet, so that he could build his set, put cars on it, put trucks, planes, and everything would shake.
And he has literally the whole 2-3 city blocks kind of rippling, and you're supposed to run across it and get into a car and drive off.
It allows us to sort of replicate all these movements in a confined space that then they cover, surround by blue screen, and then they can sort of fill in the pieces later on. It's pretty amazing to watch. And it really is very, very lifelike. When you're running through a house that is being shaken like there's an earthquake, it really feels like there's an earthquake. One of the kids said one day, "I'm actually really scared now." And I was like, I am too.
We went first a little bit, so everybody got a feel for it. And it was quite frightening for the whole crew.
One thing that's also very cool, which was not possible several years ago, is we're using softwares that are called physics-based software. So if you do a simulation, it's nothing that the computer just makes up. There's now so many parameters inside the software that simulate something that is absolutely for real. You don't do 5-6 simulations and then say like, yeah, but it actually doesn't really look like real water. We're now at a point where you simulate it and it actually really behaves like water, or the building really behaves like a crumbling building.
This is now actually the final pre-visualization that was done by Pixelmondo. This has already been edited by our editors. This is really, for us, our blueprint for the shoot. Say, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is our basis now. From here on, every single shot that's in here will be produced by us. And we're really moving from this and replacing every object that's really still like very video gamey looking and so on with higher resolution objects as soon as we have them. Literally week by week, these scenes and all the shots are getting better and better and better until we are at the final result.
Could we possibly put an 8-foot blue screen on the right side here up to the corner?
We had the plan from the get-go to shoot as much as we could for real. So we had a street that was specifically built for the movie on a back lot and blue screen all around it. We actually shot about a dozen or so shots that are also in the movie that have the real limousine in it.
We built several limos that had roll cages inside of them so that when we are dropping cars or ratcheting cars or throwing cars with air cannons, in case we had hit the limo, that the limo itself would be protected and all the people inside of it. We ratcheted a lot of cars. We can send them tumbling, like you'll see in the film, you see them tumbling in front of the limo as it races by them. So we're sending them 80 feet in total distance travel, and we'll have a couple flips done through that. Another method is we use nitrogen cannons, and we have a piston that we basically put high pressure gas behind it, and much like a potato gun, and it just shoots them out. And we could throw those cars, I mean, up to 300 feet away.
As soon as the live action footage has been shot, as you see here, all mainly people running in front of a blue screen, then it gets assembled. Based on the original previous assembly, now the editors go ahead and actually put the live action footage in and intercut it with our pre-visualization footage.
Jeez! We gotta get to the other side of the freeway!
The amazing thing about a shot like this is the detail that gets into this, because what you're looking at here is 100% digital shot. We didn't even shoot the limousine driving on a road and then build everything else around it. There is no element of a palm tree that was shot, let's say, in front of a blue screen. Every single piece you see, for example, the collapsing freeway on the left side, actually has rebar in it, which makes the freeway behave exactly like a real freeway would behave in an earthquake.
We're not there yet! Go! Punch it! I have to get to 85 knots! 80's here we go.
And a plane sequence, in terms of that it's in a plane, makes it a slight bit easier because you don't have any direct interaction with the ground. And it's almost a minor thing, but still in terms of visual effects, in terms of computer animation, it makes a little bit of a difference, because if you have a limousine, you know, it has very clear interaction with everything that happens on the ground. Of course, those kind of problems you don't have with a plane. But on the other hand, also, I mean, this plane is also flying through a lot of stuff. As it's flying through the two high-rises that are crumbling together, it's being hit by little debris and glass and so on, and there's interaction there too. And Roland would come up with new ideas. And one of the things that he noticed fairly early on is that it needs this really big bang at the end. And just originally it was planned to just fly with the plane out of downtown, you know, see it more crumbling, and that was it. But he's not happy with that. That's not enough. Just seeing entire Los Angeles downtown crumbling, that's for wussies. We have to do more. We have to do better than that.
I said, can we not make some shelves? And they all sink into the ocean. And I always said, well, how would that look? And then they just mock it up, and then you say, yeah, that is it. It's a process. A lot of times you just say to people, just to make a drawing of it, and then we see if this works. And then out of the drawing comes another idea, and slowly you evolve a whole sequence. The volcano sequence was from the very beginning, you know, we said, okay, we'll shoot some stuff on location. We have a second unit there, which shoots a lot of the camper, and then the rest will be done on stage.
You can imagine in the purely Roland Emmerich style what kind of stuff is going to be going on, and it's going to be huge. But when you're acting it, it's really hard to visualize all this stuff going down, so I tried to be as over the top as possible, which might place me just right in the pocket.
There's a huge amount that was done practical in this sequence. It's helicopter footage while the RV is driving on the roads. In the beginning, we had a discussion with Mike Rosina how much he would be able to show of lava bombs impacting around the RV next to the road.
We actually made some of these fiery rocks. We used one of those guns that fire the cars, but actually made a rock that was 10 feet in diameter and then lit it on fire and then shot it out.
But we figured out pretty fast that that's a very impractical solution, because you don't want to create any forest fires. So we decided early on to do that actually in CG. We're working with Double Negative, the company that actually does the final shot, all the digital elements of it, very closely on this. What they do next is they deliver what we call the post-viz, and they implement a rough version of all those lava bombs that come down. All these gray columns that you see are the lava bombs hitting, and eventually each one of them is going to have a great impact. So here's the same shot again now with the final lava bombs first hitting the water, and then a big piece of soil crashing and leaving this big dust trail on impact here. The closer you get, the harder it is to make it believable, because right now with all these big impacts here, you start to seeing all the detail. You basically get down to grains of sand in the end. So it's big pieces, but it's also very small pieces. So you see actually the camera is going through one of these impacts here. There's a specific moment when the RV gets hit by one of these lava bombs, and that's where the RV was prepared by the special effect crew.
We had it all rigged with pyro, and the whole backhand is one of these comets, or these fiery rocks we call them, would hit the backhand and explode and take the RV out.
And then we only in post, over the course of maybe like 2 frames or so, added this lava bomb that actually hits the RV. Finally get to the airport, we see the landing strip, and out of nowhere this gigantic crack shows up and creates this huge gap that they have to pass. Our special effect and stunt team set up this ramp for the real RV to jump over.
Basically, we redid all the suspension on it that could basically take quite a bit of a 20-foot gap jump and then land on the other side another 60, 70 feet away. We had some special seats made so that the drivers could actually not compress their spine when they actually landed on the other side.
It was very important that Double Negative built their landscape in a way that would be a natural ramp for the RV to jump over. So when this crack happens and everything is buckling up, there is actually a natural ramp that is coming up. So it actually makes sense that they would make it over. It's not just flat ground and they would just hit the other side and fall in.
All right, buckle in, here we go!
John Cusack finally makes it into the airplane that's already taxiing on the runway, and they lift off, but the whole pyroclastic cloud finally catches up to them. As you see, there's pretty much nothing. This was a plate that was shot from a helicopter in Canada at this location that we had there. And now you have to create the shot out of that. In the final shot, everything comes together, and you see especially all the detail work on the ground level here, and some of these trees being, bending over from the pressure wave before they actually get totally thrown over by the actual cloud. I think they did a great job on having this additional element of this pressure wave actually preceding the cloud itself, and swirling up all these pieces.
We expect the tsunamis to reach landfall in every continent.
There was like always this image in my head, that water comes over the Himalaya. I said, if there's a global flood, that will kind of tell the end of the world has come. I did this before in Day After Tomorrow, but not to that extent. It was the only sequence I was really nervous about, because there you hand your destiny pretty much over to some visual effect people. We found this German company called Scanline, and I saw their work and I said, I think they can do it, and Volker and Mark thought so too.
They're the only ones right now that literally can turn around water, not only fast and efficient, but also fantastic looking. The one thing you have to keep in mind with water is that water is always in several different states. You have the main body of water, which is, a big, almost firm mass that moves fairly slowly. Then it creates this white water, which are these crests of waves, which is a foamy, totally different thing. And then out of that comes this gas, literally, that is like thin trails of dust, the water spray actually that come out of it. So you're dealing with these three different types, and literally it has to get from one state to the other seamlessly. And that is still extremely challenging. And they've managed to really master that, and done an absolutely phenomenal job. It's still mind-boggling to me how fast they were churning out new versions.
Water is like a mathematical problem. It's incredibly render-intensive, and because of that you do first a very simple simulation, and then you upgrade that simulation more and more into the full thing, and that takes a lot of time. At one point we discussed we have to do something about the White House, and we were kind of very aware of that I destroyed the White House before, so I said well, if I don't destroy it, it's also not good. So we tried to figure out a way how to destroy it in a new way. And I was at that time reading a lot about the Kennedys, and all of a sudden it hit me, I had this idea that the aircraft carrier John F. Kennedy smashes into the White House. And I don't know what excited me about that, but I realized this was a stunning visual, and also had this slight ironic kind of feel to it, John F. Kennedy returns to the White House.
You see shots that are coming in and you think, yeah, that's exactly what I thought it would be. And then you see shots where you think, yeah, I was hoping for better, so we've got to work on this for a few months. And then suddenly you see stuff where you think, oh goodness, this is even better than I thought. This is absolutely fantastic. And we had that a couple times, and the Washington destruction of the tidal wave was one of those, where really when we first saw that, just slowly the aircraft carriers coming out of the mist towards us, and then we saw the shot where it actually gets carried by the wave, and we thought, oh yeah, that is really going to be cool.
I think the fun thing about 2012, definitely for us, was that you now have the means to put you as an audience right in the middle of everything. Several years ago, we couldn't have done it at all. It's a totally different thing, something you've never seen before.
It's easier to talk about it afterwards when it's done than during the time when we do it. You see disaster on a scale that you've never seen before. You will see stuff within those disasters that you've never seen before. I mean, I personally have never been in a 10.5 earthquake where the concentric waves of the earthquake are rippling right behind me and lifting up houses and trees and, crumbling high-rises.
The
pretty much now in CG technology destroy any building, any landscape you want. It gives you like a new freedom, you know, and I really use that to the max. And it was also a little bit the fun of it. Maybe I said like, okay, this one will be the last one. So I do everything what's human possible. So I don't have ever to go back there again.